In 2025, RGG Studios decided to try something new with the Yakuza franchise. They tend to do it every few years, and hilariously, the concept for this game originally started as a Fisherman Kiru, which I don't know about any of you, but I need this immediately. I could just picture it. So glorious. Look at him. He's beautiful. Honestly, with the spin offs, I was kind of surprised that RGG Studios were still willing to take such a dramatic risk with the series. Like, this game still has the Yakuza franchise's elements in it, but it's still very different to the rest of the games, and it's not guaranteed if you like the Yakuza games, you're gonna like this game. The main reason I thought RGG wouldn't do a game like this again is their avoidance to Dead Souls completely. They absolutely hate that game. A lot of people hate that game. I still haven't completed it, but it just has a very bad reputation, and it seems to have put like a break on most of the series' proper spin-offs that changed the game so dramatically. I want to be clear here that it's obvious that this didn't stop RGG Studios from making spin-offs altogether, but if you look at their spin-offs compared to Dead Souls, they're a lot more in line with the actual franchise. Like, Judgment itself didn't change much to the combat. Well, it did, but now the mainline games are using the same type of combat, so did it really? What I'm getting at is Pirate Yakuza has enough changes within the pirate stuff that I do think that getting it wrong was a really big risk for RGG Studios, because if one entire half of the game is not fun, the entire game will not be fun.
Well, no fucking shit.
You could probably say it's due to the success of Gaiden and Judgment that RGG Studios are willing to take risks again, but I don't necessarily think that's true. Honestly, the game that I think had the most impact on this game's release was actually Yakuza 7's change to the turn-based system. Whatever the reason may be, it just seems that RGG Studios is willing to take creative risks again, and I'm all for it. Pirate Yakuza turns out to be a perfect casual experience. I think the reason this specifically is such a good spin-off is it has everything that makes a good Yakuza game, while at the same time introducing all new pirate mechanics. The good thing with this game is you don't really need to play the rest of the franchise to enjoy this one, but at the same time, obviously you're rewarded for being familiar with the franchise. All that being said, there's one major elephant in the room, and that's the price of this game. Even when I bought it, £50 was a lot of money, and I was very excited for the game, but it's a very steep price for a spin-off that is shorter than most of the mainline Yakuza games, especially in story. So I know that the main thing that will turn people off this game is the price tag, especially with it being more expensive than other Yakuza games that you can get started with. But do I think it's worth it? As I mentioned before, this game delivers everything you'd want and expect from the usual Yakuza title. Hilarious and engaging mini-games filled throughout the mainland of Hawaii, many of them lifted from Yakuza 8 itself, and tons of new ones itself too. The great thing is, even though we may never get another Yakuza title in Hawaii after 8, we got this game that was able to follow up on some of the sub-stories from 8, like the cafe one, which I just thought was hilarious, and a great follow-up, honestly. Something I've appreciated from the very start is actually how big of a chunk we actually got in Hawaii. I was expecting the island to be much smaller. Honestly, I was expecting it to be the size it was in the beta. However, the finished product opened an entire other section to the map, making it twice the size it was in the beta. And that's not even including all of the different islands that you can set sail to. For most other Yakuza titles, they stick to 1 or 2 city maps, but here the sheer number of islands and exploration zones add a welcome scale to the game. Even after getting the 100% achievement, I still feel like I've only scratched the surface on the things to do in the mainland. Despite the game's short main story and the reused content from Yakuza 8 and other Yakuza games, there's so much new stuff to do, and it's such a treat to get to explore this island as Majima. Finally, we have an actual Majima game! Yakuza 0 is great, but it's not It's not the Majima story I want, okay? I want more of this. I want more of this Majima. This Majima's great. These games have definitely got the beat 'em up combat down at this point. It feels fluid and satisfying. Cutting down enemies becomes effortless once you get a feel for the controls. While the game is on the easier side, I definitely think, I feel like challenge seekers can always up the difficulty with self-imposed limits or mods. In fact, I've already been to Nexus Mods and seen a difficulty mod, so feel free to look for that if you find the game too easy and are looking a bit more of a challenge. But of course, you can always do stuff like no hit runs or do something where you can't upgrade, and that would make the game a lot harder and maybe a lot more fun for some people. However, while 100%ing the game, there was definitely some difficulty chunks in there that made me want to just pull out my hair. So don't write off the difficulty completely when you're going into it. There is some fair challenge. It's not the easiest game in the world. It's not Mario. For me, this is where the game truly shines, and it's also where it stumbles the most at the same time. As with many spin-offs testing a new formula, the Pirates' mechanics are full of promise, but sometimes lack the depth. Still, it's all optional content for the most part, and the fun factor makes it work. I love that Pirate Yakuza gives you about 10 maps to explore. They're small for the most part, and they're very streamlined, especially where you can land, but offer enough variety. In general, my biggest gripe with the game is that the exploration feels a bit too guided, especially with only being able to get off on certain islands on certain spots. Treasure hunts are basically linear dungeons, fun but predictable. The chest is always at the end, removing the thrill of actually hunting for some treasure. There are a couple mission types, 100 enemy gauntlets and wave-based fights, where the auto-spawning chest at the end feels a little more justified. It's not as bad to me as just, running through something and getting the chest. In fact, specifically those missions, I think is where the game thrives in its optional content. If you are a treasure hunter, however, interestingly, RGG Studios did hide treasure across the main island, and that's where you get more satisfying exploration with it. But on the smaller islands, the process feels too handholdy, and it's not my favorite thing in the world. Another minor issue I have with it is the sailing can feel a bit cluttered, mainly because of the boost rings that are so giant and they force you in such a direction that you're not even touching any buttons anymore. I get that they're meant to make travel faster and more exciting than other games like Black Flag and Sea of Thieves, where the sea travel can get quite boring, but to me they kind of kill the vibe, and they make the ship just feel less controllable. I don't know, I feel like less of a pirate. That being said though, the ship controls odd, but it's extremely fun. It's very lightweight, almost arcadey. You can Tokyo drift your boat thanks to cannon mechanics that reward turning instead of waiting for the reloads. Like I said, this isn't Sea of Thieves or Black Flag, and it doesn't want to be. Pirate Yakuza prioritizes its fun over anything else, and honestly, that makes for a far more enjoyable game for me. I feel like my last major gripe with the game is the fact that you can only board select ships, or ships in the Colosseum. This feels almost like a missed opportunity. Imagine sailing around and stealing some ships or looting unique treasure in those ships to unlock new ship skin, or new ships in general, or even just new upgrades for your ship. When it comes down to it, I think that Pirate Yakuza's biggest flaw truly is its limited freedom. It helps that the mainline games are very streamlined themselves. It does feel a lot like a Yakuza story in a lot of aspects. I just think that this game should have been more open, and that's coming from someone who absolutely despises open world games like Skyrim. Honestly, I won't dwell too long on the Colosseum, because honestly, it's just the combat systems combined, and that's already the best part of the game. As I explained, I truly enjoy the ship combat and also boarding their ship and going back to the normal Yakuza combat, combined with a huge amount of enemies to fight. I do think that the way the ships handle will be very hit or miss, because a lot of people, including myself, will probably expect the ships to be a lot heavier than they are, but honestly, I think that kind of adds to the charm of the game. There is another point that people may not love, and I do think it is a bit of odd design, is that you need to reach a certain level of progress in the Colosseum to progress in the story. Personally, I didn't even notice it during my playthrough because I had already explored most of the pirate content before returning to the story. But it's a classic RGG time padding move, similar to what we saw in Gaiden. Honestly, I think it's way more egregious in that game, especially with how Akame's works. I also enjoy doing those tasks in that game, but I think it's a problem whenever a game is making you do what's supposed to be side content as part of the main content, and I think that's what a lot of people have an issue with. It feels like they're just trying to do some filler, and with a £50 price tag, I could definitely see why some people would have an issue with this. The writing here is very lighthearted and solid. Yakuza has a well-established formula for introducing new characters, as I'm sure if you've played the other games by this point you have noticed some similarities with how they introduce new characters. But honestly, I think one of Yakuza's strongest elements is actually making me care for characters I wouldn't usually give a shit about. I'm just glad that it doesn't feel like a forced emotional investment. As I said before, Noah could have easily been incredibly annoying. I think most people would agree with me that children in media tend to be a bit more annoying than the adults. But you know, instead, I think he's genuinely endearing. It helps that he has a pet fucking tiger. If the father-son dynamic between Jason and Noah doesn't really click for you, the story might feel weaker. But I think the game handles it with just the right amount of charm. Sure, the sick kid with a dream is a cliche, but the way he interacts with Majima transforms it into something heartfelt and memorable. Honestly, that relationship carries most of what I enjoyed about this game. I think also if that doesn't work for you, you will not enjoy this. Honestly, the thing that I could compare this to the best is Interstellar. I think that's a fantastic movie, but I don't think someone will like it if they don't like the relationship between Cooper and his daughter. I just think that this game's emotional core comes down to the family and not really any of the adventure going on. So if that stuff doesn't resonate with you, you most likely will not enjoy the story of this game too much. Another thing is, compared to most other Yakuza stories, this one is much more lighthearted compared to the rest. Like, yes, there's darker moments, but for the most part, the tone is casual and relaxing. The treasure plot ties both into Kiru's current arc in the story and Noah's story. So it means that the game has something else going for it than it just being a simple gold hunt that I don't think anyone would have been really invested in. I've also seen some people complain about Chapter 1, specifically when it first came out. I tuned into someone watching... Well, no, I tuned into Asmongold's stream, and someone in the comments was saying that this game is horrible because he was playing for like 2 hours without getting to the pirate stuff. So, I definitely think that Chapter 1 will drag for those to dive into that stuff, but long-time fans of the game will feel right at home. We all know, we've played Yakuza games, we know that these games start slow, especially the games that are trying to set up more lore and new relationships. And honestly, I think that works in its advantage. I want the time to get to know these characters, or else they will just thrust you into an adventure, and the motivation will just be completely lacking other than just being Majima. Despite its flaws, Pirate Yakuza nails exactly what it set out to do. A Yakuza vacation. The whole experience feels like a warm summer breeze, laid back, fresh, and fun. Even decades after the series began, RGG is still finding new ways to keep it exciting. Other franchises stumble when trying something new, often because they chase an idea without fully committing to it. Pirate Yakuza, by contrast, goes all in and completely succeeds with what it's trying to do. Ultimately, it's a lighthearted, easygoing spin-off that doesn't overstay its welcome. If you're a long-time fan, you'll find plenty to enjoy here, even if the £50 price tag stings a bit. And if you're new to the series or just want a fun weekend game, this might be the perfect place for you to start. I will say that the £50 is very steep, so what I recommend to those that cannot afford £50 to throw on just a spin-off is just wait for this game to go on sale. The beautiful thing about being a Yakuza fan is that even the most expensive games go on sale for insane prices. I saw Yakuza 8, just a game only out a year ago, drop to below 50%. So what I say is add Pirate Yakuza to your wishlist on Steam and wait until it goes on sale and then scoop it up then and just enjoy your vacation.
おれ